Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Soldiers of Cinema podcast, here for our big grand episode 30.
Woohoo!
30 episodes down, which is
Yay!
kind of insane, considering that it feels like we just started this thing.
I know.
So we're going to kind of continue on our, Clark and I, as per usual, are going to kind of continue on our little exploration outside of just Herzog. And
it's not going to be little, Cullen. It's going to be huge. Yes. That's right.
We're going across the wasteland today.
In the same way that Mad Max 2 opens on Academy frame and then expands into CinemaScope when we see the last of the V8 interceptors and their fake supercharger blower come into frame. We're going to expand our horizons, right?
Yeah, and so as
how'd you like
as
that
you
tie-in?
could probably
That was awesome.
surmise from here, we're going to be doing Mad Max today. We're going to be doing the original trilogy of Mad Max, so excluding Fury Road, just because that's kind of a different beast.
Yep.
So we're doing the original 79, and then Road Warrior and Thunderdome. And
exciting.
So I think this will be a lot of fun. I mean, it had been for me ages since I'd seen these. Actually, I'd never seen Thunderdome before. I'd seen parts of Thunderdome on television.
Oh, this will be
like
fun.
on reruns over the years.
Yeah.
But I've never just sat down and watched the entirety of Thunderdome. Whereas I remember, I think the first one I saw as a kid was Road Warrior, and then I saw Mad Max 1 a few years later. I didn't realize that Road Warrior was a sequel for a really long time.
So yeah, let's let's talk about that real quick, because it's interesting. It's always fun, especially with films like this, and of course by today, especially since the release and the wild success of Fury Road.
Yes,
everybody knows Mad Max. Mad Max is. We're going to talk a little bit that he's. That character and especially certain aspects of the Thunderdome film have become part of pop culture. They are
lots of video games
part of the lexicon.
It
is, it just permeates our culture. But it wasn't.
It's a genre in and of itself.
It's a genre in and of itself. You can
describe something as like Mad Max-ish,
But it hasn't always been the case.
No.
And of course, we have you and I are a generation apart. We are about 20 years apart, and so I always love to kind of compare how we came into what our relationship is with these films that we're reviewing, or not really reviewing, but we're discussing. And this is especially interesting to me. There's so much analysis that's been done about these films, like I was kind of hinting at. So these films are, everybody knows these films. They're hugely popular. Anybody who's a fan of cinema has likely seen these films at least once, and certainly you're aware of them and kind of have a vague idea of their impact. So there's been so much analysis and so many words, ink spilled on these films. And so I don't think that you and I are going to be able to, to provide anything kind of new really in that realm, except, and this is what I love about this podcast, our own personal relationship with those films.
Yeah.
And that's what's so fun to me about cinema, is that really, half of that art form takes place in the mind of the audience. So I'm really interested to see how the difference between how you and I came to these films. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, again, you're 20 years younger than me. So how did these films find their way into your life, and what was your experience with them?
I was, I think probably 8 at the time. My uncle showed me, Road Warrior. He used to I used to
that
just basically
uncle. There's always that uncle.
No, the uncle that shows. He used to basically just show me movies that were like probably way too old for me. I remember he showed me Doom as a kid, and
nice.
Of course this, and a whole bunch of other Apocalypse Now, I think was one of them. But so he put on. And he always had the biggest TV. This is back probably 2005, and he had this brand
So would that be like a rear
screen.
project? Oh, he had a flat screen by then.
Yeah, he was one of the first people I ever knew. It was when flat screens were first coming out, and they were probably $10,000.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
had, surround
that's
sound and all that.
Nice. That's a great uncle.
I remember him putting on Road Warrior, and it was and I mentioned this to you earlier, but there's a visceral memory that I have, and even though it's been so many years since I'd seen it, I still always remember this one visual of him right at the beginning of the movie when he pulls open the door of the tractor trailer and the body falls out on him.
Right.
And that terrified me as a kid. That was what I thought. That's kind of why as a kid I always thought of these movies as horror movies. They weren't post-apocalyptic. They were scary, zombie flicks or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was my first experience with it. I remember thinking it was insane, and that it was this very weird. I think I kind of watched
It's such a
that
great
weirdly enough
scene.
almost back to back with Blade Runner, and so I kind of almost have this weird connection between like I think as a kid I made up this almost like mythos in my head that
I do too.
Mad Max was the country of Blade Runner. Like they
Yeah.
existed in the same world, and that
It's
Blade
like the
Runner was in the
rural.
city, and then yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it
Mad
would be
Max was out
like
in the
that.
country.
Well, it's I don't think you're alone in that. I have a similar connection. But okay, so you saw Road Warrior first, and it
Hmm.
sounds like it had a bit. Now, what did you think of it? Outside of being kind of, um, it was impactful. You were kind of like freaked out by the scene where it's in the first few minutes where Max is being chased.
Yeah, and there's a little few
He
jump scares and stuff.
and
Yeah,
he like flips the script and he gets them, and right, he comes across a tanker truck which ends up being pivotal to the story
hmm,
later.
yeah,
And so he opens the cab door, and out falls this seriously awesome looking grotesque
yeah.
dummy with
And
like
there's like a
eyes
scream sound
bulging.
effect as it does, like ah. Yeah, it
And
sounds
there's
like it's
this
alive.
great,
Yeah,
oh god, there's some great sound effects in this. You're right, there's
yeah,
that great
yeah.
scream sound. I remember as a kid, like I watched it on VHS, and so there's no real good like pause functionality
No, you
on
kind of have to wait for
VHS.
the
But
tape to
yeah, but
stop.
I
And yeah,
remember trying to like pause it like right on the frame, because that dummy is only in frame for like it's only on screen for like 6 frames, or it's
yeah.
very 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 short. And so I remember trying to pause it. Like, how did they do that? Was that like a guy in makeup, or was that a dummy? Like, what was that? And I remember just like being mesmerized. Okay, but what did you think of the whole film when you
Oh,
were so
I
young?
mean, I remember it was one of those things again that I loved,
Yeah.
like very similar to what we were sort of talking about in the personal kind of stories episode that we did 2 episodes ago.
Uh huh.
It was like anything at that point that scared me or like made me go away from the movie but still think about it and still kind of be affected by it was always
Yeah.
something that I really liked. And so I would never say that I was even as a kid I wouldn't say that I was a fan of Mad Max because I didn't watch it that much. I think I only
Hmm.
saw it probably twice as a kid.
Now you're talking
But
about no Road Warrior.
Road
You
Warrior,
were
sorry, yeah,
now
Road Warrior.
because you hadn't seen Mad Max yet. You
No.
saw Road Warrior first, and most
And so
people.
I thought that it was just, yeah, I thought it was just the one. I didn't know that
Okay.
there was a third one. I didn't know that there was a first one. I thought that the Road Warrior was just because, of course, I'm not quite sure what the marketing was, but I know that it was initially marketed as Mad Max 2 and then changed
Well,
to Road Warrior, right?
so I'll clarify a little bit. So in North America, the films were marketed slightly differently around the world, but in North America, it's my understanding that so the original Mad Max film, which was released in 1979, was actually a huge success in Australia. Matter
Hmm.
of fact, it was the most successful independent film ever made until Blair Witch. And in the world,
Hmm.
not just in
Yeah.
Australia, but it was extremely successful in Australia. So when it was sent over to the United States, a couple of things happened. It was the first film I'm talking about. I actually, it might have been because Road Warrior was made so quickly, just 2 years it was released after Mad Max.
Yeah, it was 79 and
I
82,
can't
right?
remember exactly. Somebody's gonna be able to clarify for us in a comment or something. But maybe the Road Warrior was released in North America either maybe slightly before or about the same time, or there was something kind of timing situation there where the distributors in North America said, nobody's going to know who Mad Max was. People in North America hadn't seen Mad Max. There wasn't
Hmm.
this theatrical distribution. Of course, I think they underestimated how popular Mad Max had been on VHS.
VHS and home
But
release, yeah.
so they said, hey, look, no, it's not Mad Max 2. Let's call it something else. And so the Road Warrior was its original release title in North America.
Right, to
It
kind
was
of, yeah.
it was only
Mhm.
later, once the films really had a wide audience, that I think they tacked back on, like Mad Max 2, the
Yeah,
Road
because now it's kind
Warrior.
of Mad Max 2 : The Road Warrior. Yeah, it's
Exactly,
kind of
but
the
I always
common.
knew it was just the Road Warrior. There
Me
was
too.
no Mad Max
Yeah.
anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was exactly it for me, was that I only knew it as like it was kind of funny. This is a bit of a unrelated, but I remember my friend had the same experience with like he saw Star Wars 77
Mm.
and didn't know that there were any sequels for the longest time. But it was the same thing for me. Was I saw the Road Warrior and I
Okay.
thought that was it.
Yeah.
And then it was probably not until I was like maybe in grade 9.
Okay.
So arguably maybe like 8 to 10 years later
Okay.
that
Yeah.
I
Good.
that I watched Mad Max 1.
Okay. Now, how did you
And
find out about that film? Was that were you
I think
kind
I
of
knew it.
like,
Like, I think I pretty much, in middle school and stuff, found out that there was a first Mad Max and just never really got around to watching it. Of
okay,
course, then there was no like Netflix. There was no, you
sure,
kind of had to
much
go. That
harder
was
to,
back
yeah,
when you still had to go to Blockbuster and get it. And usually, when my family would go to Blockbuster on a weekend, it would be to get something that we would all want to watch. So, didn't really
oh,
have the say to convince them to get Mad
yeah,
Max 1. But
uh,
yeah, so I finally watched it probably in grade 9, and I remember loving it. But I remember thinking, like, again, as a kid, the Road Warrior was always like the cooler one because it was kind of
sure.
bigger. It was
It's
more
bigger. There's more of a world,
bombastic, yeah.
more
And whereas what
action.
I found what was so funny about this time I watched it,
Hmm.
and again, it's been so long since I watched either the first or the second, that I found myself, I love both of them, but I found myself enjoying the first one a lot more. Like,
Interesting.
I found because I watched them right back to back all in one night. And so I watched the first one and I was like, man, this is awesome. I forgot how, intense Max's intro is, and how,
Yeah.
how grounded it still is. Like, I love that it's still got the idea, like they go into a
Yeah,
hospital
especially
at one point, and
the whole like second act, I mean,
yeah,
there's a huge chunk of that film that is,
where it's like all romantic and stuff, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it really like changes radically.
So
Okay. And
so
then
I
would you
but I just found myself really loving that, and I don't know why, but I just much more than I had in the past. And then I
well, we'll
watched
go into that. Yeah,
um
we'll go into that in detail in a
yeah,
bit. So,
yeah.
and so okay, so it was you see Road Warrior first as a young kid. You're like a freshman in high school when you see Mad Max, and then where did you catch Thunderdome? Was that
It
about
was
this?
always on it was one of those things that was like on AMC or
And
something.
that's
Like,
right.
it would
That's what
just kind of
you said.
be
You'd
on
never seen it
TV.
all.
Yeah, so I would just see it.
Oh,
I'd probably honestly seen it not a few times, but I'd probably seen clips from
pieces.
it as like a kid and not
Yeah,
known that it was had anything to do with Road Warrior. Because
gotcha.
it's another one of those examples where it's like
It's
it's
very
very
different.
different. He doesn't have his car. The
Yeah,
only car chase in it is really the ending.
it's a train
He's
chase.
got long hair. He's got, even just it's much more. I would say what Thunderdome reminds me a lot of is like kind of like Willow almost, like
Okay.
that like 80s style of sort of sci-fi
Well, especially the
fantasy.
second half,
Yeah, where they get
the
to the kids and
yeah,
the
and there's a
forest.
huge
Yeah,
tonal shift. And we're going to talk about that too a little bit as well.
yeah.
George had a different partner on that film. Of course, Byron
Double
Kennedy
the
had
budget of the previous.
double the budget. It was PG-13 as opposed
Yeah.
to R for the first two. Like, Byron Kennedy was, of course, no longer alive after the first two films, who
Hmm.
was, integral to the creation of Mad Max, co-creator with George Miller. So, definitely a lot of different things, probably a lot of studio pressure
Yeah,
to
but I
make it
actually I
more
don't know what your
widely
opinion on
appealing.
Thunderdome is, but I actually liked it a lot more than I expected to.
I
Um,
actually like it quite a bit. I'm
yeah,
actually a big fan, and I've been a big fan of all three films for a long time. So
yeah,
yeah,
and
so
I saw when I was going into it again, having only seen, probably maybe a half hour to 45 minutes of it at a time on, again, like AMC. Like, I've probably seen
yeah,
the ending and maybe the
with
openings a few times.
commercials and
Um,
edited and
exactly, yeah,
yeah,
and probably on an old like CRT screen or something. But I remember, and then you just get the kind of like pop culture lingo of like, oh yeah, the
yeah,
third one sucks, the third one's not the good one, the third one, is so different, blah blah blah. It doesn't have any
right,
car chase, and so you just kind of get into your head this idea that it's like,
a
oh,
lesser
I'm probably
film.
not going to like the third one. It's probably going to
Yeah,
be the one that just kind of falls flat. But no, I was like, this one's really, again, I think if you go into the third one expecting the Road Warrior, you're not going to get that, because
and
again,
that's
there's
probably
no,
that's probably
yeah,
what happened. I mean, I even remember at the time, so because I was old enough to actually I saw that film in the theater. So
yes, yeah.
Thunderdome I actually saw in its original
It
North
was
America,
85,
and it's
right?
yep, and it's you. I
Yeah.
was 9 years old, and I actually remember seeing that film in the theater. I liked it a lot, but yeah, for me, real quick, just to kind of pair or show, kind of contrast my experience with the films real
Hmm.
quick, and then yeah, we'll go into some of how the films were received and some other things. But I mean, for me, it was like, yeah, my father was kind of an early adopter of electronics. He actually worked for electronics companies, several different at some point, yeah,
Hmm.
consumer electronics. And so we always had like VCRs and, like
Like the old
much
JVC
earlier. We
camcorders and
had that.
stuff.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
dad actually worked for JVC when I was a
Hmm.
kid. So we got to have all that kind of stuff pretty early on. But, and my dad had, as part of this, like his job selling consumer electronics, I think he actually like went to the very, very early, before chains, mom and pop video stores to like sell them equipment,
Hmm.
as part of his job, like working for in consumer electronics. And so he knew, like, he had good relationships with like all of these local uh, uh, tape rental places and stuff. And when they were like fairly rare, kind of cutting edge, it's not widely accepted or not widely practiced, kind of like it ended up, being with Blockbuster and Hollywood Video and all these other different companies. Until, of course, they went away, and now they're gone. And now we have Netflix. We've gone through like several cycles of
Hmm.
technology now since then. But so, and I've already told you about how I kind of found Mad Max, and that was that my parents had these viewing parties when I was a kid, and they would purposely get these grindhouse, exploitation genre flicks, which of course Mad Max absolutely is one of. And so I caught glimpses of it when I was extremely young, and I was just blown away and mesmerized by it. And that was, and the funny thing too. I think most people probably know about this by now, but at that time it was dubbed, and all of the actors were
Hmm.
dubbed.
Yeah,
So, which
including
radically
Mel Gibson.
everybody,
Yeah. Okay.
everybody, Mel
Interesting.
Gibson was dubbed. Everyone was dubbed. And because it wasn't just that the American distributor thought the accents would be a problem, but there's actually like a lot of Australian specific slang in the film as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
And so all of that personality was removed, but the visuals were still so powerful to my little mind. It's like you were saying, it's like when you're so impressionable, and when that these scenes can be so just vivid and impactful, and it leaves you thinking about them, for a long time after you've watched it. But yeah, so I was blown away by that. And so, and I, this is with my father's help. I mean, it was like, I'm sure he knew that the Road Warrior and Mad Max were kind of, were in the same universe, and that one, Road Warrior was a sequel. So he would just rent them for me.
Hmm.
And because I loved the, first one so much. So as a kid, I always preferred Road Warrior,
Hmm.
as a kid, because it's just so much more a visceral movie. It's,
It's definitely like if you haven't seen them, I would say Road Warrior definitely shares the most with Fury Road.
it's just a distilled, right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like it's just a very, very precise
It's
distilled.
brutal too. Like the tied guys
It's
on the
just
top of the
action. It's just,
cars and yeah.
and there's more of a world because they had some
Yeah.
budget. So there's, Mad Max, and I very much love that film too, but it's, they didn't have any money on it. So there's
Hmm.
none of the world building that really stood out to me as a kid in Road Warrior and Mad Max 2. I mean, just the costumes and the cars,
Hmm.
and of course it wasn't dubbed, so I had the language, and the actual actress performances there as a kid, as opposed to this watered down version. I
Yeah.
don't think I saw Mad Max with the actual real Australian dialogue until it was released on DVD.
Hmm.
It took a long time for that to get, and they probably had a laser disc, edition somewhere
Yeah.
along the
Yeah.
line. But I
But
never had
I'm
a
sure
laser
that
disc
you.
player,
Yeah.
so it wasn't until like 2000 plus that I was actually able to see Mad Max as it was actually made, as it was
Hmm.
intended to be seen. And then, like I said, and then I saw Thunderdome at the theater. My parents took me because, of course, they knew that I love these films. And I mean, it was like every week we would go to the video store, and my dad would rent Mad Max and Road Warrior just back to back to back. I mean, I could still remember the cover, especially of the Warner Brothers Mad Max VHS tape. Just had a huge impact on me. So for me, I mean, that was like, I was so much more into that than I was Star Wars, or any of these other films that were such huge
Big
landmarks,
franchises. Yeah.
big franchises, even Indiana Jones, which I loved. But yeah, I think it was probably, I could say that The Road Warrior was the most singularly impactful film of my entire childhood. It
Hmm.
was a huge part of inspiring me, motivating me to get into the world of film. It was just the right thing at the right time for my little young brain. So
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, it really was, and it's something it has stayed with me to this day. My love is not diminished for all the times that I've seen the film. It's
So
it's
I'm curious to know
yeah.
too. So because I'm assuming that even when you had the original Mad Max that was the dubbed version. It was probably Pan and Scan. It was probably
Pan and
yeah.
Scan. It looked
What
like
was your
crap.
initial like when you got to see it in its full form? What
Yeah.
was your reaction? Like, did it feel like you were watching a new movie, or
Oh,
did
it
it
did.
feel? Yeah,
It did.
yeah.
I actually have a pretty vivid memory of the feeling. The number one biggest thing that I felt
Which
was
you were probably, so that means you were probably my age when you first watched it.
when I
The original, the
actual
authentic version.
the
Yeah.
authentic, yeah, we'll call it the authentic version. What I was totally blown away by was how good the performances were, because that was completely lost in the dubbed version.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, holy crap, this is actually good acting. This is actually like, these performers are actually like, this is because, at this time I'm much older, so I kind of, I have the language to kind of analyze these things, where of course I didn't when
Yeah.
I was 8.
Yeah.
But that was the biggest difference, because the dubbed version is so bad.
Well, it's funny
um
that they would dub, like, to me, because Mel Gibson, of course, was born and lived in the States until he was 9, I think, and
but
then
he did
moved to
have an
Australia.
Australian accent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but even then, like, I find that his accent is much more
Mild, very mild.
mild and sort of almost more of a I would describe as a global accent, where it's like you
Yeah.
just sort of sound like you're speaking English. It doesn't really have, you got tinges of certain
Well,
things,
especially
but
later, especially in the later films, for sure,
yes,
because of
yeah,
course he rounded that his accent out for his work as an
yeah.
actor. But yeah.
But no, I mean, again, I think it's so, like, again, just to go through just real quick, not like plot by plot, but I just think that it's interesting how, so like the first one to me is very, very grounded.
Yeah.
It's like more of like a Warriors type thing, where it's
Yep.
like, oh, these gangs have gone crazy, but there's none of the, like, the implied kind of like cannibalism or like cults or like,
Well,
nomadic people living out, and there's sort of more of just like, it's lawlessness, and that
and that's
these cops are kind of the only,
and they actually tacked on that, a few years from now, and
yes,
they tacked
yeah,
on that title because, like, they didn't have the money to film at any actual locations.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
very,
So
so
it's
it
just
was
the
like,
outback.
so it's like, well, how are we gonna like make this fit? It's like the police station is this rundown, place. It's
Yeah,
like
and then they've got
we
the
don't have
hospital that's like clearly only cops are afforded health care, and like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's like, well, how are we gonna do this? Oh,
yeah,
well, let's say that it's like a little bit in the future, and we're on the brink of lawlessness, or so that's kind
yeah,
of how that all
it's
came out.
it's funny too, and it's, so you get to that, but like, again, it really does, and I don't know if you have, but I've been to Australia. It just looks like the
Not
outback.
yet.
Like, it's not you don't get that desert, that nuclear wasteland that sort of comes up in the later ones.
Hmm.
It's just sort of like is the decay of society and
Yeah.
that lawlessness and stuff. So it's much more grounded, much more,
Yep.
again, there still is like a law enforcement, because
Right.
Max is, of course, a police
There's
officer,
still
like a highway patrol kind of
civilization.
thing.
There's
Yeah,
restaurants.
yeah.
There's
They say
like
that
auto
it's
shops.
like outside of, like they kind of imply that like the big cities are still relatively civilized, and that it's
Yeah.
more the interior of Australia, like the outback, that's kind of gone nuts.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of fun. I mean, even that is just kind of a fun world built. Like, even though it's not as you say, like, built up in terms of lore as the later two, it is sort of a fun, like, midway between, like, oh, this
It
is
worked
kind
great.
of like a
Well, it
little,
worked
like,
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
it feels much closer to our reality. Like, it feels like, again, when they say, it feels like it could be like 7 years out from now, whereas the next two feel like it's like,
Well,
they talk
thematically,
about the old world in terms of like, as though it's legend, and as though it's
right.
like,
Well,
mhm.
thematically, it works perfect, right?
Yeah,
Thematically, it's perfect because this is, the first film is where Max goes mad. The first
yes,
film,
yeah,
so the landscape, and this is one of the things that I find so beautiful about the film. It's something that has really inspired me. These films were a big inspiration for me for studying Joseph Campbell
hmm,
and, the hero journey. And I feel like these films very much fall in line with that. I think most people were probably turned on to that by Star Wars of my generation, but
yes, yeah,
where Lucas specifically stated that was
yeah,
an
it's the hero's
inspiration for
journey,
his
yeah,
arcs. But for me, it was this film, and I think that the landscape is such a beautiful representation, symbolic
hmm,
representation of Max. Right, they're one and the same. But yeah, that here we have Max. He's got a wife. He has a child. Civilization is still there. We're on the brink, but there is, we're not there yet. And when Max loses his wife, when Max loses his child, then we have that shift where Max
He
is
goes
now
mad. Yeah.
literally and figuratively in the wasteland. And so for Mad Max 2 to start where this has really progressed now makes
Hmm.
total sense. And
Oh
then
no, yeah, and it actually works really.
it
It's
works
actually one of
fantastic.
the,
Yeah.
because it almost implies in the second one that it's like he's now going further into the outback, and that he's like
Absolutely.
going further into
In
the
the
gang controlled
wasteland.
territory. And so then, because we get the whole idea again that the people that are leaving, they're trying to get to, like, to the coast where there's this, like, whispers that, civilization still exists, and
Right. Well, the
um,
second one is like, right, we have this really cool introduction with stock footage and actually
yeah,
even some footage
from the first one,
from the
yeah.
first film where they actually flesh this out much more, where, the world ran out of oil, and of course this caused wars, fighting for, because especially at that time, right, that was a real concern, and of course it still is. It's kind of
Hmm.
changed a little bit now, where we're worried more about global warming and
And
climate
water
change
and stuff like that, yeah,
than we are necessarily about petroleum running out.
or
But that
nuclear
was
devastation and stuff, yeah.
right. But that was a big, that was a big fear, especially coming off of the oil crisis in the 70s.
Hmm.
So there was like very much, this real fear, and it's my understanding that that was kind of supposed to be a little bit more of Mad Max, but again, budgetary
No
constraints.
budget, yeah.
I mean, we do actually have that scene where the gang steals gas from a tanker.
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
really wonderful
you're planting
stunts.
those ideas for
We're
the later
planting
ones.
these
Yeah.
ideas, yeah, and it just worked out great. This kind of these budgetary constraints, kind of I think they really played into the strengths of that and
Hmm.
left this really open, this open canvas for exploration into the other films.
Which is also because I what I find too is that the third, like, Thunderdome, really reminds me of Army of Darkness, which is the third Evil Dead movie, like,
Ah,
where it's
much
kind of,
more
again,
comedy.
it fits it much more, like, more, again, it's PG-13, so you,
Mm-hmm.
like, again, one of the things that I always compare it, or kind of like compare them with, is that in Mad Max 2, you've got like those captured prisoners that are tied to the front of the car, and it's like very
Mm-hmm.
brutal, and then they at one point slam into the back of the trailer, and it's like you can see the blood squirting, and all that. It's very,
Watermelons.
very brutal,
I
and
love it.
again, much more similar to like what goes on in Fury Road, whereas is Thunderdome is much more, again, of sort of more of like a fantasy, like it's like these like nomadic civilizations that live out on the desert, and like Max is sort of like implied to almost be like this mystical figure of legend, and so you get into this much more fantasy kind of
More
genre.
fantasy.
Yeah,
There's more world building.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of jumping around all over here, but yeah, it's whereas I feel like Road Mad Max almost even it's funny looking back now almost has it's like there's it's almost like a drama in a lot of places.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like you've got this whole section of Max with his wife and his child, and they're going on vacation, and I mean there's it's you've got this friendship with Goose
Hmm.
and all these kind of things, and then Road Warrior is very much just I almost feel like that's just like it's like a straight shot. I mean it's just like
Oh, doesn't waste any time.
it
Yeah.
doesn't waste any time, and
Not
even
that I mean, not that I didn't find in the first one that it was like it
no
felt like it was a hard to get through. It was actually very enjoyable. But no,
no
exactly,
don't
like, exactly, they cut all the fat in the
not
second.
yet. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about boring or not boring. I just mean
Yeah.
like story structure wise. Road
Yeah.
Warrior
Yeah.
is just it's just if it's like a highway that's just going straight. There are no detours. There's no offer. It's just like boom.
Which is, I
And
mean, again, it would be like, to me, I almost find if someone were to watch them, it would almost feel more appropriate to go Mad Max 1, 2, and then Fury Road, and then Thunderdome. Like, I find that Thunderdome feels like it's way beyond, and that, like, Max is older, he's got the gray hair and stuff,
uh-huh.
whereas Fury Road, to me, I don't know what the actual chronology in terms of the world is, but Fury Road feels to me much more like a direct sequel to Road Warrior than it does to Thunderdome.
In many ways, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Fury Road is built very similar to Road Warrior,
Hmm.
and so the two very I mean right they follow the very similar structure. They've got the long drawn out chase scenes.
Hmm.
So yeah, they feel very similar. But yeah, I mean the Thunderdome was so inventive,
Yeah,
and I
no,
mean
I loved Thunderdome. Yeah.
and but starting even with Road Warrior, I've just you can't give enough credit to the costume and production design.
Oh
The
God,
people
yeah.
who built these cars, the people who built these costumes. I mean, it's especially with two, it's like that's all you have to build the world because the outback basically is this open canvas. It can be
Yeah.
anything. It can
Yeah.
be anything. And when the costumes were so uh were built with such specificity and such detail, and so were those cars, and they tell the story of the world, which is just fantastic. And Thunderdome takes that to an even greater level,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Bartertown, the construction of Bartertown and the
And like
idea.
you get the legal system. You get
You've
like
got their
Thunderdome is essentially the
Thunderdome
yeah.
and break a deal, spin the wheel, 2 men enter, 1 man leave, and so these are so inventive and so captivating that so many of these things found their way into our common lexicon. And
Yeah, and even just
people
the
who
idea too of like the like the political relationship between like who controls the energy really controls the the city and
well,
stuff and
Master
yeah.
Blaster. I mean, these
Yeah.
things. I have run into people who were not even aware that this language came from this film,
Mhm.
and they use this language. Like, I've had people like, 2 men enter, 1 man leave, and I'm like, do you know where that comes from? And they're like, I don't know, I've just heard this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's Mad Max Thunderdome. Or people, I mean, whether it's like a Tupac video, California Love, which is like they completely stole the Thunderdome idea. It was so interesting to me to see so much of this enter like pop culture.
Mhm.
But you're right. There were a lot of people who felt like that this film Disneyized Mad Max.
Yeah, which I honestly but I didn't one of the things that I didn't find that for was because I found if anything what felt more Disney to me was the feral child in 2. Like
Oh,
I find that
interesting.
I find that kid like just like a kid who's like very good at essentially
Throwing
killing
his
people, which is
boomerang.
not of course very Disney for a kid to kill people, but I just mean that like that to me is really
That's
the
interesting. See,
it's not that I find it doesn't take away from the movie for me, but it's just I almost feel like if the feral child wasn't in 2 that it to me wouldn't really have much of an impact. I don't really love
so
that character, but
I would disagree. I would
okay, interesting,
disagree. And an email if you're listening. I think your performance as a kid there was awesome,
yeah.
but I disagree. I think that the feral kid is a really important part of that film, in that there's one place where Mad Max has a connection to humanity, and
Mhm.
that's it. And that's it. And I mean, we could go. There's been reams written about Max as an anti-hero, as a reluctant hero. I think these
Mhm.
films are some of the best
He's very much
examples of that type of
the
character.
passing through like kind of almost like the Clint Eastwood Man with No Name,
These are very much
Yeah.
westerns in many
Yeah.
senses. Absolutely, that's another way that you can kind of approach looking at these films. They are very like Australian westerns. Absolutely. But I feel like that character, the feral kid, is actually very important, and I think
Mhm.
it's because Max is he has. I mean, it's something like 16 lines of dialogue. He
Yes. Yeah.
smiles twice in that film.
Yeah.
He has no relationship or connection to anyone. He's ruthless to the gyro captain even after he helps him. He only helps people because
He
only
needs
when
something.
his
Yeah.
needs intersect with
Yeah.
theirs. I mean, and I think this is great. And I'm like, so I think it's wonderful that they stuck with this because, of course, there's always such a push to make a likable character, and, you have to redeem them in the end and all this kind of stuff. And so it's nice to see them taking risks with this. But I feel
Mhm.
like without the feral kid character, I think we wouldn't get any kind of hint or window into Mad Max's humanity, and I think that's important. But it's interesting. I've not thought about that. That was kind of maybe the seed for really going hog wild, no pun intended, on
Mhm.
Thunderdome of all of the methane factory, but really going hog wild with that and having a whole group of kids.
Mhm.
I mean, I feel like it's almost like you could. I feel like the kids in Thunderdome are like the Ewoks of Return of the Jedi. It's like
Yes.
people
Yeah.
either like love them or you hate them.
Yeah.
But
I didn't mind the actually it was what was weird was that and so yeah I thought that the kids weren't a problem in 3 at all.
yeah,
I thought it was a really interesting kind of
it's a huge shift
Very, yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
yeah.
big risk. It's a
I mean,
big
again,
risk.
it becomes more like, I think that it's just, I can see the criticisms with the movie of people who are like, ah, it's not like very violent, it's not
Hmm.
got that intensity,
Well, and this
which
it's
is
that
fair, but
humor.
I didn't really, it didn't bother me. I don't think it was, yeah.
And I think one of the big there's tonal. It's not just the violence because there's some
Hmm.
good violence in it. Although
Yes,
especially
yeah,
by today's day and age, standards, it's not gore.
no, no.
At all. But there's some great fight scenes.
That
Obviously
Thunderdome fight is a lot of fun.
the Thunderdome fight is very inventive. Master
Yeah.
Blaster, that whole idea is very inventive.
Which is
You
funny
know,
too, because I hadn't seen this whole movie and it's been so long since I've even seen pieces of it.
yeah.
I was expecting, of course, you're expecting Master Blaster to be kind of the key villain for the movie,
No, that's over.
but it's over in like, yeah, in
Yeah.
like 20 minutes,
Well,
or
and
maybe
that's
30 minutes. Yeah,
it's really yeah. I mean, I think Tina Turner is fantastic in this film.
yeah, yeah. She's a lot of fun.
Tina Turner. Just speaking of villains, as you brought that up. It's my understanding that Miller actually wrote the script with Tina Turner in mind.
Oh, really? Okay.
In this role. Yep. So
Yeah.
it wasn't some kind of like, stunt casting like after the fact or something.
Hmm.
That, I've read that Miller said that he wanted a woman, a strong woman who had been through a lot in her life. And of course, if you're familiar at all with Tina Turner's life, you know that she has been through quite a lot and
Yes.
persevered and survived to be obviously very, very successul. And
Hmm.
so he knew this about her, and he was like, "This is, I mean, that's who this character is. That's who this is." So I thought that was fantastic casting. She really never did anything else. I don't think before
Yeah,
or
she was in the
since
last Action Hero,
as a
like as a
cameo.
very
It's just a
small
cameo.
role. Yeah, but in terms of like actual roles, no.
That's it. And so
Yeah.
and she was fantastic. I thought she was perfect. A great
No, yeah, she
foil.
really worked. And again, it reminds me, like, that's where it really reminds me a lot of the kind of Willow,
Yeah.
sort
I
of
haven't
like,
seen that in
like where it's
forever.
like, it's very,
I remember really liking it. Not that we
yeah.
want to shift gears and go into Willow right now, but I
But
feel like
no,
yeah,
it feels very, like, again, her character feels much more like like, and what I liked about Thunderdome a lot was that it feels like, rather than, so like 1 and 2 very much, like 1 is very much the prelude to like total chaos.
yeah,
2 is the total chaos, and 3
or the
very much has the
wasteland.
feeling of like the remnants of society and civilization building back.
Trying
Like
to
you
build
get this
that, yeah.
idea of like, okay, so this is what the future
Well,
is
and
now.
and that's the hero journey.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I'm saying is that you're in the community, you're at home, you're safe. Then you go out into the wasteland, and then you come back to the community, and you have changed, and you will change the community. So there's obviously that is like ridiculously summarized and distilled. But that's where you kind of get the structure. So I think it works really well as a trilogy. But yeah, I mean, I think tonally, I was just going to say there's so much a different approach to humor in this.
Yes.
And not that
Yeah.
there wasn't any humor in Road Warrior or Mad Max, there definitely are, and especially in Road Warrior, I mean, there's some some really dry
goofy stuff.
humor,
Yeah.
but it's goofy stuff. I mean, you've got, and I think that's I'm a little torn. I'm a little torn, and I know this was definitely an issue for a lot of people, but it's like everything from the frying pan, in that final chase scene where the witch doctor is like whacking people in the face,
And then
with
the
frying
guy
pan.
keeps coming back to consciousness and then gets whacked in again.
And then he's using it as a steering wheel, and a little bit of that felt over, and you've got the kids like in the
Thinking that the
methane factory
747
like
is-
swinging back and forth, and it's like
Yeah.
it kind of reminds me of Goonies, a
No,
little bit.
exactly. That's a good comparison too. Where Goonies or like,
I mean,
almost-
it's Ewoks, Goonies,
I
Temple of
don't know if you ever
Doom.
saw the Ewok Adventures, which were like the spin-off
Never saw any of
kids.
that.
So they were made for TV movies that I used to love as a kid, but they were called Star Wars Ewok Adventures. There were two
Okay.
of them. And it almost feels very much like that, where it's like, it's this
slapsticky.
it's like this, yeah, it's like when the kids start swinging and or
and
like
the,
even
the,
yeah
there's no real risk. It's like, these kids aren't going to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
I think
no
only one of the kids really dies in the
danger.
sand, right?
They do. They
the
actually
sand trap, yeah.
they actually right. And of course you've got in the 80s, right? It was like what everybody was terrified of, quicksand.
Yes,
It's
yes,
like
clearly.
everybody's dying. I mean, it wasn't, I guess, technically quicksand because it wasn't like in a swamp. It wasn't wet, but yeah, the sand like literally swallows up one of the kids and they can't
Yeah.
save him. So, but
Which is also very similar to the scene in Lawrence of Arabia, which again, I was kind of remarking that it's the same composer of the soundtrack, and not only that, but it's very, again, like all those long scenes of someone like with no water trampling through the desert trying to get there. Very, very much feels like it's kind of an homage, if anything, to some of the Lawrence of Arabia scenes.
It reminds me too of like Good and the Bad and the Ugly. I mean, it's a very commonly used symbol, right? And whether it's in T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland or it's in this book, I mean, this is.
I always think of
a landscape
of Spaceballs.
Spaceballs. You
when,
think
when
of
they're
Spaceballs.
when they're in the desert, and then it's like of course it dissolves to the sun in the sky, and you hear John Candy go, "Nice dissolve." Every time there's a dissolve in the desert, I always think of that.
I haven't seen that in so long that I don't have a recollection of it. That's funny. I mean, well, it is, so let's talk about that real quick, because you'd mentioned the composer for the films. So the first two films have
Brian May,
which is not
Queen guy,
not Queen, but Brian May did the score for those first two films. And especially as a child, you don't like consciously notice these things. I mean, they have a huge impact on me, but you're not like analyzing them or consciously thinking of them. But I was kind of surprised at the symphonic,
traditional feeling of it,
traditional kind of symphonic nature of these scores, and especially with the first film, like really bombastic and big, and
lots of horns
and
brass
but I very much like them. And you mentioned dissolves, kind of that, especially in Road Warrior 2, with kind of these the swipes that they had. There's
lots of like transitions.
Transitions. I totally got like a little bit of a Star Wars vibe here and there.
I thought the exact same thing
with the score as well. I was like, it's big, like a Williams score. From that era.
Which is so funny too, because I think, again, what I had mentioned before, we just like in our little conversation prior to this, was just kind of that going into this again, because it had been so long, that you almost expect, like, I obviously didn't expect it to be the Junkie XL score from Fury Road,
right?
But I sort of went into
different.
it expecting that it was going to be, just from memory, or just, I guess, from like, it's just what you assume because you've just associated that with Mad Max, is that it's going to be sort of like tribal or like weird instruments, but
really
no, it's very
sparse.
much a pretty traditional film score.
Very.
And even especially during the romance bits, it's like there's like the nice strings and
it's lush.
It feels, but again, it was one of those things that I was like really pleasantly surprised with the first one. I never didn't like it, but I always just remember being like, oh yeah, the first one's good, but the Road Warrior's where it's at. And then this time I was like, I really, really love this first one. Like, I thought it was like so great. And just again, that opening scene when it's like, it keeps cutting back to Max just sitting on the side of the road silently waiting for it. And just how interesting it is. I think it really is interesting to watch, Road Warrior, Thunderdome, Fury Road, and then kind of go back to the first one and go, oh yeah, like this started with Max just being a police officer.
Yeah.
Like it did.
Well, not just a police officer though.
Yes, the highway.
Clearly the best.
Yes.
And you mentioned it. You mentioned it in passing, but I do. It's my opinion that in the first film, and it runs probably a good 10 minutes or so. I don't remember exactly, but it's a good chunk of time. That entire first scene, which is really perfectly done, all serves to introduce Max. And it is one of the best character introductions you're ever going to see on film.
It's so good. Yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic. And it really is an example, and I can't overstate this, a pet peeve of mine, but it is a great example of using film the way it's supposed to be used, which sounds like, really pretentious, but I mean, instead of having a writer tell us what a character is through exposition or dialogue, we're actually George Miller shows us who Mad Max is through his actions and through through visual storytelling.
Hmm.
And everybody out there, go back and watch this again if it's been a long time since you've seen it, because I mean,
Even
it
the
is.
gang member starts crying and stuff. And it's like
Oh,
clearly they know who.
it's so fantastic.
But I love how the inciting incident again. Like people always kind of praise the simplicity of Road Warrior in
Hmm.
the storytelling. But the storytelling is so simple in the first one too. Like just
Sure.
that the
Oh yeah.
inciting incident is just essentially the accidental death of the gang member. Like Max doesn't even really mean to kill the guy.
Right.
It's more of just like the guy just loses control of his car, and then of course
Yeah.
that's what incites the entire plot is that the
Everything
gang starts
else.
coming after the cops.
It's extremely
Um,
simple. It's a
yeah,
revenge film. I mean, that's where I'm like, it's very much like an American Western film.
sort
It's
of. Yeah, it reminds me of Once Upon a Time in the West, which
yep,
it's like that kind of whole revenge story. Yeah.
which is super common, and it's the trope of a man has his family taken away,
Hmm.
and that leaves him a shell of a man, and he's out to
And you really feel the emotion when his wife and kid die of like
oh,
that
it's
shot of him
beautifully
running
shot.
down the road,
It's
and you
so
don't
great.
see them. Like you're just stuck on
Well,
Max.
you see the shoe and the
Yeah,
ball on the
yeah,
highway.
and the what is it, the pacifier, right? I think the
Yeah,
pacifier falls over. Yeah,
I don't know if it was a pacifier or a ball, or maybe
yeah,
you're right.
whatever it is. Yeah.
But it's so beautifully done. And instead of getting right up in Mel Gibson's face with the camera and like showing the tears fall down his face, like so many directors would have done in that
Hmm.
situation, what do? George Miller stays way back, and you've got this beautiful, the your eye is drawn right to him. The road just paints the way right to him off in the background, and he's tiny, isolated, alone, this
Hmm.
figure, and it's just fantastic. So
Yeah, yeah.
good stuff, man, good stuff. So yeah, if you want to see a good character introduction, check that out. And let's talk a little bit too. So oh yeah, well, music, let's go back to that.
Yes, yeah.
So then the third film is scored by entirely different person, and you
Hmm.
had mentioned that that it was scored by
Maurice, I don't know how his last name is pronounced, but Jarre. I don't know
ah,
if it's Jar or if it's Yare or whatever,
I
but
was gonna have you do it because I would have mispronounced it. So
let's see how
I'm
to
not sure either.
pronounce
But he
Maurice.
scored, as you indicated, of the many things that he scored. Lawrence of Arabia was one of the films that he did, of course. And
Oh, it
Dr.
is
Seuss.
Ja, is Ja, yeah.
Okay,
So
perfect,
Maurice Ja,
perfect.
but yes, he did Lawrence of Arabia.
And you
Which
felt like there were some. I mean, it seems like you could clearly draw some correlations to those two films.
yeah, yeah, totally. Both in the content of just the desert and stuff like that,
Just
but
the
even just
landscape.
in the soundtrack. There's points when it does sort of feel in a very good way. It does have that kind of Lawrence of Arabia, like that big bomb. I think that the Lawrence of Arabia soundtrack defined what the desert sounds like in film.
Desert sound. Yeah, yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
like every single
So
big
iconic.
movie that has like
So
a
iconic.
desert sweeping dunes will use that kind of motif of like
Yeah.
that da da
Yeah.
da 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 like that like screeping, yeah, which I love.
I know what you're
But it's even
saying.
used here.
Yeah.
It's like a little bit.
I agree. But I think all three films do a fantastic job. You do have some more interesting kind of instrumentation in the Bartertown scenes. There's some,
Yeah, there's a little bit more of like a kind of
percussive,
mhm,
kind of,
especially in the Thunderdome fight and
yeah,
in the when you go down to the pig factory thing.
yes, the
Yeah,
methane farm, or yeah, the
yeah.
pig farm slash methane factory. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about performances too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And starting with the first film, I mean, and to go back, that was, you asked me, well, what was the biggest difference when you saw the first film as it was intended, as opposed to having seen it with the American dub? And that was what so stood out to me, was
Hmm.
that here we have this tiny budget film. It's a genre film. It's a B film. It's an Australian exploitation film. It has no right to be good.
Yeah.
Right? The performances have no right to be good. I mean, how many films of this budget, of this genre, have
Are
performances
good.
that are even like, watch it, right? They
And
usually
that's what's so
are
surprising.
horrible,
All the like,
and they're all
there is
good.
no performance in this in Mad Max One
It
that like
speaks
is
to
like
George. I think it speaks to the direction
yeah
when you
this
have
the skill of
performances.
his, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Mel Gibson is is completely, he's so young, which like, wow, of course when I watched this
Yes.
as a
Yeah.
kid, he looked like he was 40 to me, when I was 6 or whatever. Of course now I look at it and I'm like, he's just a child. He's like, I think he was 21 or something in the
Yeah.
first film. I mean, he's so young. But and Hugh Keays-Byrne just, I think, steals the show in
Hmm.
every scene he's in. He's fantastic. But a lot of these actors, I think every character in the film, or every actor in the film, builds an interesting, believable character
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
enjoy seeing on screen. And whether it's Goose, I think that was Steve Bisley,
Hmm.
um, Johnny the Boy. I mean, you've just got it's so much interesting character, and I almost wonder, it's like, and maybe part of that is that when you're an American and you're young, culturally, these people seem a little more alien, and that works for the
Yeah.
film.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just, there's so much personality and character, and sometimes I'm scared that, are we gonna like cast that out of our films where everybody has to be
Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
cool and beautiful and
No, and that's why I love like things like this. I love just yeah, just I like it when movies like kind of embrace the weirder, sort of more character actory sides
I
of their
love it.
actors and kind of go far with it, you know?
Yeah,
Really bring it into the make it memorable. Like really go with it.
all of the, I mean, they're visually interesting characters. The
Yeah.
performances are fantastic. Yeah, so I mean, I mean, especially like Hugh Keays-Byrne again. It's like, that was the biggest thing. I didn't realize how wonderful his performance was until I got
Yeah.
to see it,
Oh,
where
it's
it
so
was
good.
actually him, where it's actually him performing instead of
Yeah.
some American dude in an ADR booth. No offense to whoever did that if you're listening out there, but I mean,
Yeah.
um, but just extraordinary. And I mean, Mel Gibson's performance is, and understated but grounded. You talked about how this film is grounded. I feel like his
Hmm.
performance is very grounded. I feel like, I mean, look, he
I mean,
just
he
had a
gives
great.
up, he leaves, right? Like that's what's I love about, just the idea that this character you really get the feeling of when he goes from just guy that's like I'm going to go live with my wife and kid
Right.
to Mad Max. Like
Yeah.
you feel that. And I think a lot of that is owed to even
Without
just
without hyperbole,
Gibson's.
without
Yeah.
exaggerate, without melodrama,
Yeah.
which is the danger here. You can really get to that, but then, and
Yeah.
we go into Road Warrior, and again, it's these characters don't have much dialogue, and it's one of the things that has inspired me as a filmmaker. And don't misunderstand. I love the written word, and there are films and television shows, especially, that I've seen that are really dialogue heavy that I'm very fond of. But
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
is something to me that is so captivating about a film that is brave enough to fully embrace storytelling through moving pictures. And The
Yeah.
Road Warrior is just, I feel like, the epitome of that. It's
It really goes back to the origins of cinema, which is
yeah,
just
you
like
could
yeah.
make that a silent film.
Yeah.
There's no question Road Warrior could be a
And I do
silent film.
recall a lot of people saying similar things. Again, kind of the similarities between the two when Fury Road came out was that it like it very much was reliant on the visuals, reliant on
And
the
physicality,
yeah.
these characters, these actors bring their, and just because you don't have dialogue, I think maybe some people might, I don't know, think, well, the actor's job is less. I completely disagree. I think it's more. I
No.
think
Yeah, yeah. To be
to
expressive
bring,
with your face and stuff. Yeah.
well, and specificity, to
Yeah.
bring a specificity to it, I think uh is more challenging, to really be, to have the physicality and the specificity of physicality. I mean, everybody in this, I mean, you love Bruce Spence as the gyro captain, of course, and Mel Gibson, I feel like, even more comes into his own. I mean, he's so iconic and
Mhm.
like mythical in this film. He
Mhm.
does such a great job of doing that. But I mean, like Vernon Wells, of course, is, I mean, the character he created of Wes is like, I mean, that's kind of pop culture. That's kind. I mean, he even like ended up, doing a cameo in, what was it, like, Weird Science with that character. I mean,
Yes.
it really transcended the film. Everybody was so good in that film. Even the small roles, I feel like, were just very well drawn, distinctly drawn with specificity.
Yeah. Yeah,
And then,
and I think too the Road Warrior is really the one that even just kind of transcended this franchise, and really like when you think of something like Borderlands or like
Yeah.
pretty much any inspired media that has kind of come
Oh, it
from it, very
inspired so.
much is it's like just the
Yeah.
mohawk having, almost like hockey gear wearing
Well, yeah.
bad guys. Yeah.
The production design and costumes of these three films had, it would be hard to overstate the impact that it had on popular culture. It
Yes. Yeah.
really, really, really had, and you could probably go back, and I'm sure people have done this. You could go back and you could look at how many films had been, or TV shows had been inspired or had ripped off or were homages to
Yes.
this trio of films. I'm sure it's in the thousands.
Yeah. And
Um,
I actually had a question. So
yeah,
maybe this is just a clarification.
yeah,
Bruce Spence, is
yeah.
he playing the same character in 2 and 3?
So you're asking a question that so many people have asked, and it's like everybody has this question,
Yeah.
and I can't speak definitively, but it's my understanding that, okay, so it's one of these like really wonderful kind of beautiful things about art and cinema that, you know, everything is kind of a symbol and kind of, you know what I mean? There's fluidity. It's kind of a dreamlike kind of logic. So I think the short answer is no, they're
Hmm.
not the same character, but I mean, they kind of are related. They're, it's like you bring into Thunderdome, like when you see Bruce Spence's face as the pilot in that, you bring with you your experience of him as the gyro captain and road warrior, right? And
Yeah.
you almost feel like there is some connection, but I think literally there isn't. They're not supposed to be the same character. But of course, when George Miller decides to cast the exact same actor in a very similar
In a very,
role,
yeah, pilot.
you
Yeah.
know that there's like people are going to think that that's connected. And so I think yes and no is the answer. I think that
Mhm.
on like a dreamlike film logic, kind of level, they're like
Well, I
related.
almost feel like it's supposed, like, because Thunderdome to me takes place so far after Road, like it seems like it takes
It
place like
seems
way in
to.
the future, that it
Yeah,
almost seems to me like it's almost like Max, it's like we're in the head of Max correlating those two. And that Max seeing
sure.
this
That's
this new
another great,
guy as a
yeah.
pilot is almost like, and again, that's just my take on it. And then when I was watching last night, that was my assumption, was that it seemed, because at the beginning, like, you don't really know, because there's almost an implication that like Max,
They
it
have a
almost seems like their
relationship.
relationship has like broken down, and that
Yeah.
now the gyro captain is just kind of pissing Max off and stealing his stuff.
And I love
Whereas,
that. And I
yeah,
love
but you
that.
don't know exactly. And so I was
Well,
just curious to know from you if like,
that my understanding is that it is literally not,
mm-hmm,
but clearly there is a strong connection. And I mean, how do we end Road Warrior? We end the Road Warrior to put our minds back there where Max has driven the tanker off the road. It's fallen over. Max realizes that it was filled with sand. Of
yeah,
course, did he know that before? We don't know. Maybe
mm-hmm,
he knew and he did it, and he knew he was a decoy. Maybe he didn't.
yeah,
But he kind of chuckles at that, and who pulls up alongside him? It's the gyro captain, and they
mm-hmm,
like share a smile. It's like the second, only two times that Mad Max smiles in that film.
yeah,
Well, now open on the new film, and what's the very first thing that happens?
it's the gyro, well, not,
That
well, the
he's not
Jedediah,
called. Yeah,
yeah,
he bombs Max off of his caravan and steals it.
yeah,
So there's definitely a strong connective tissue there,
yeah,
and but I love those kind of things. I think that's fun to. I mean, I'm a big fan of kind of playing with expectations
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, and
kind of
using casting as like a,
leaving
yeah,
things open and vague. And I mean, you could really take this even further. I know that the Fury Road is outside the scope of this discussion in this podcast here, but there's a lot of that there too.
yeah.
Like, well, what's the time frame does this happen in? Like, it's these films can kind of be independent of each other.
No, they're very much. I see them much more as like
Or
tableaus of,
yes,
like, they're like vignettes
yes,
they're very serial in that way, where it's like you don't really need to watch them in order. I mean, I would say, of course, the first one probably first, because that's the one that's the most.
but by no means
Yeah,
mandatory at all.
no, and apparently George Miller has said that they're different characters, but
And that was my understanding that
yeah,
they're different characters. But I mean,
yeah,
come on, it's like when you cast the exact same person
in the
in such
almost
a
an
similar
identical role,
and you
yeah,
end one movie and begin the next movie
with them,
with
yeah, yeah.
them. It's
And it
like
could, and again, to me, it could also almost be playing up the idea of just like, people can't remember cities, they can't remember planes, they don't remember all that stuff. That it's
It's
almost like your
subjective. It's a
memories are so
subjective.
bad
Yeah.
that he just doesn't remember the gyro captain,
And
and
I
that's
love
like,
playing
yeah,
with that.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah, yeah.
love playing with that. And
Um, but
but
no, I think that what you were saying, that was a really good point too, of just this idea that it's like, yeah, they are sort of serials of just this world. Like they're just like, you're coming into this world for, because every single, 2 and 3 especially end very similarly, which is like people
yeah.
talking about like, and that's the last time we ever saw him. Like,
Yeah.
who knows
Well,
where he went, kind of thing.
it's like, and another way to one of the ways that I look at it, I feel like, to me, is that, so, Mad Matt, these are stories that for the most part are being told by somebody else. If you look
Hmm.
at the structure of 2 and 3, these are there are stories that it's like this person had an experience with, and Mad Max came into their life, and they are telling you the story, right? Especially two is very, it's like, Mad Max drove the trucker, the tanker, and we were able to get away in the bus with all the gasoline, and I went on to be the leader of the northern tribe. That's the
Hmm.
feral kid, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But I kind of get a sense that, like, that's Max is a myth. Max is a myth, is like a mythical character, and
Hmm.
these are. And you know what happens to myths. We know what happens to stories. It's like, that'd be like people telling stories about, like, who would be a mythical character, like in the American West, let's say Buffalo Bill. I mean, there's
Hmm.
like a million stories of this person, and how much of that is true and how much of that is
Exactly. Yeah.
fiction. And they're just these, they're stories that take place, kind of revolve around this character, revolve around this wasteland universe. And it's not a literal thing. So I think it's like much more fun to kind of have it that way, in my
Hmm.
opinion. So it'll be
Hmm.
interesting to see what happens with the next upcoming Mad Max films. I'm a little bit scared. I'm also extremely psyched and extremely
Yeah.
excited
Especially
that we're
considering
gonna.
that Miller is in charge of them.
Well,
So
that's, yeah. I'd be terrified, frankly, if he weren't.
yeah.
But the fact
Yeah.
that George Miller is directing, and there's 2 films, right? We had kind of looked
Yeah,
this
there's
up briefly.
Furiosa, which is in pre-production right now, and then there's The Wasteland, which is, and so as far as I believe, Furiosa is a prequel that's just going to be centered around Charlize Theron's character, not
Which
Mad
will no
Max.
longer be played by Charlize Theron,
Yeah,
but
younger
yes,
actors, yeah.
yeah,
And then The Wasteland is like the next Max tale, like
yeah,
with him in there. Yeah.
right. So I'm excited. I'm a little bit scared because you always, it's I consider all 4 of these films in this series to be great films, personally. And of
Hmm.
course, we've already discussed how they have personal, emotional, like, I'm very connected to these films. They're a huge part of my love for cinema and my desire to be a filmmaker.
Hmm.
So hopefully we'll continue with the same quality, and I'll be excited to see what Mr. Miller does with these next films. But
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm curious. As we kind of wrap up here, uh, how would you kind of rank the trilogy for just yourself? Obviously, very subjective. We're not
Hmm.
trying to make a statement that this is some kind of objective, but just, if you kind of like had to, how would you rank them on just your personal
Yeah,
liking
in
of
terms
them?
of what I enjoyed the most, I would say 1, 2, 3. 1 and 2 very, very close. 3 a little bit below, just because it does lose, like, you don't have the car chases, you don't have as much of the,
Yeah,
like, it's a PG-13, so it's a little bit
yeah.
tame. But I enjoyed, as I said, 3 a lot more than I expected to.
Was there
But no, I
anything
would say
else
that
that's
in terms of this one, which is surprising because I was really expecting 2 to be my favorite, 1 and then 3. But no, I something about 1 this time just like really, got me on board, and I was like loving it the whole time.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah.
So real quick too, I just want to revisit. So since you had not seen 3 in its entirety, what was kind of the something that stood out that you were maybe surprised about, or that really caught your
I
attention?
think how far in the future it's set.
Okay.
I think that was the one. Again, it's never really specified in the movie, like what the date or like
Mm-hmm.
how far it's been since the second.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think I wasn't like I was really expecting again I honestly expected Thunderdome to be like a gladiatorial combat with cars, like that it was going to be some
Ah,
like almost like a rally car thing, because of
very
course
interesting.
the
Like
movies do have
Destruction
relation.
Derby or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I expected going into it, because I don't think I'd ever seen the Thunderdome scene before.
Yeah.
So I was really expecting that, and I loved it though. I loved the Thunderdome scene. It was a lot of fun. Like it's actually a very
So
fun and
inventive.
really
Yeah.
inventive fight scene. Yeah, but no, I think that was really what shocked me, was how, again, also how much it felt like fantasy more so than just straight like post-apocalypse sort of like the other two.
Yeah.
That there was a lot more of this fantastical, like
Captain
legendary
Walker and
mythos
yeah.
and stuff like that,
Yeah.
which is interesting because I mean that it does kind of highlight the like evolution of like human thought, of that you get to this back to this primitive kind of cave drawings type of society.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was the most shocking to me though,
The
was like
pocket
how
clips.
yes, yeah, and how different it
And they
felt
had the
from the first
TV.
two.
I love how they have the stick
With the
frame
TV, yeah,
for
with the
and
TV
that's their
frame.
TV. Yeah.
Yeah,
And the Sonic, and I mean that's
yeah,
super inventive stuff, I think.
yes,
Super
yeah.
inventive stuff. Yeah. I hate to like it's so funny. I mean, I'm the one that asked the question, and here I am saying it's kind of goofy to rank them, because I think they're all so wonderful, and so it's
Hmm.
like really splitting hairs to me. But based on like my emotional attachment, I would say probably Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, would be the film closest to my heart.
Hmm.
Honestly, and then it's really close for me. I would
Between three and
Thunderdome and Mad
one,
Max
yeah,
are so close, yeah,
yeah,
that it's hard for me to even split the two apart. But
right, yeah.
but yeah, well, I mean, any other parting thoughts as we
No, I mean, I
wrap
think
up
that's,
here?
yeah. I think I've said all I can say. I mean,
Well,
I
then
could talk about these for ages, but I don't
you
want
could
to.
we
We don't
could,
want to
but
go on for 10 hours.
well, hey, it's like I think I made a mistake in the last episode where I miss you have to, when we post these, you fill in part of, like, for the RSS feed information is the length, and I think I missed I typed in an extra number or something. So somebody had mentioned that they thought our last episode was 9 hours
Yeah,
long.
yeah,
And I was like, whoa, nobody wants to listen to us for 9 hours straight. Oh my
yeah.
goodness, let me fix that. But yeah, so before we go on to 9 hours here, we'll wrap it up. But it's such a joy. I mean, these films have been such an important part of my life, my film education, my inspiration. So it's such a blast to
Hmm. And
to talk about them. And I do want to, there's one tiny thing that I want to add, just one tiny thing, because that's,
mhm.
we started off where we were Herzog focused. It was, Werner Herzog 24/7 for us in this podcast. This is really the second episode where we have expanded past that. But I want to make a small, something that really stood out to me. We've talked about this many times in Herzog's films, and the importance that it is for him is this landscape of the soul, right? And I
Hmm.
think that these films here, these Mad Max films, are just so at home with that. I mean, the landscape here is such a vital part of the storytelling. George Miller
Yes.
does such an excellent job using the landscape, selecting the landscape to represent um, the Mad Max's soul, and
Hmm.
I think he does an extraordinary job with these films with that. It's some of the landscape he creates, like with Thunderdome, but much of it, of course, they scouted and found, like in Broken Hill and the outback in Australia. So which someday I hope to visit. But
It's
so
a
it's just
beautiful
a little
place.
bit, a
Yeah.
little bitty tie-in,
Well,
there.
I think too that, just again, it's kind of like his final thoughts. If you've never seen them,
Go
I
watch
would
them.
say, well, A, watch them, but B, like, I think a lot of people expect almost this, like, kind of cynical post-apocalyptic, like, gray, not very fun, very kind of almost depressing things. But there's so much fun. Like, there are a lot of fun in,
So much
yeah,
energy. I mean,
yeah. They're
if
very
you're a
kinetic.
fan
They're
of
very, yeah.
yeah, if you're a fan of film and visual storytelling,
And they're
these films
colorful and, yeah,
are
yeah.
extraordinarily kinetic,
Yeah,
and they do
yeah.
have humor, and they do have action, and they are, and especially by today's day and age and standards, these are not actually violent films. I
No,
mean, in
not
their
by any
era,
means,
I
yeah.
think they were considered violent. TV shows have 10 times the violence and
Yeah,
gore.
look at
Like,
Game of Thrones.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I
Yeah.
was even thinking just like a network TV show has
Oh,
this
yeah.
much, But you're right. Game of Thrones is like like infinitely more than this. So
Mhm.
don't be scared away by that. If you're kind of there are, I would say there are some scenes where there's some violence against some women characters that are difficult to watch and
Yes.
unpleasant
Yeah.
now, for sure. Though that was actually something that also kind of stood out to me, and it's obviously
Yeah.
like that's a
Yeah.
big trope in a lot of these older films where to like illustrate how bad a gang is or something, they will perpetrate violence against women, and that can be shown graphically, which is very unpleasant and
Yeah.
unsettling. But it doesn't go too far.
No, it's not. It's not. I wouldn't say it's like grotesque or over the top. It's just it's there. And
It's
it's
just
kind of
there,
an
and just by
yeah.
its very nature, it's like unpleasant.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, on that note, we'll wrap this one up. So yes, Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior, and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. If you've not seen them, which is like I can't imagine that you haven't, go out and see them. Uh,
Yes.
so until next time, we really appreciate you listening. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, Cullen, thank you so much for your enjoyable conversation and insight. These are always a blast for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
we'll see everybody next time.
Yes. Bye bye.